I'm here with Scott Kurkoski, the attorney for the Joint Landowners Coalition in New York, which is a group that represents, what, Scott, about 77,000 individual landowners in
That's
the
right,
state?
77,000 landowners throughout the state, over 38 landowner coalitions, and we're now over 1 million acres in unleased property.
Okay. So 1 million acres, and all of those landowners, of course, have a single interest, which is, can we lease our land for drilling? And as you know, we've been in this moratorium now for more than 4.5 years. I received an email, interestingly, from the Joint Landowners Coalition just this past week, which talks about the upcoming, I guess you'd call it a deadline, that would have to be met in order for this to go forward now, which is February 13th, and that's a deadline for the DEC to print the guidelines that they intend to use so that they can go forward by the end of the month, the 27th. It's a little bit complicated, but if they don't meet the 13th on Wednesday, then it means that this process starts all over again. Is that right?
It appears that that's going to be the case. I mean, technically, they've got a couple more days until Friday.
Right.
The reason that the 13th is a crucial date, that Wednesday, is that the environmental notice bulletin comes out that day. So that's the day that the SGEIS should be published. It has to be published 10 days in advance of the regulations, which need to be out by February 27th.
Okay. So this email that I got was very interesting to me because it says you're laying the groundwork for potential lawsuits for something called de facto takings. Now, before we get into what that is, does that mean that you think they might not meet that deadline on Wednesday?
It means that we're not taking any chances. You know, we've been down this road before.
Right.
We've seen how this has played out.
Right.
If this was supposed to happen at the end of the summer, and by all accounts, the DEC was ready to go.
Right.
The DEC did an interview with CBS News and said they were ready to go.
Right.
And then something happened. What happened was political. It wasn't substantive. As long as the DEC has been looking at substantive issues, I've been telling our landowners, look, it's very hard to commence a lawsuit in that scenario. But when that changes, when there are other motivating factors to the delay, then we have a private property taking. Under the United States Constitution, you can't have a taking without compensation. And that's what is going on in our view, if it turns out that the governor does not green light this week.
Okay, so then takings means, in essence, in layman's terms, that an illegal action has caused some harm to the landowners, that they can't profit from the land, that they should be able to profit from.
The Fifth Amendment of the Constitution says that the government cannot take private property without compensation. That's what protects us all.
Okay.
So what's happened now is that they have done a private property taking to the extent that landowners would like to market their minerals, they would like to participate in the shale revolution that's going on in this country, help with energy independence, provide jobs to their communities. All of those things now are being taken away from landowners in New York.
Right.
We've been patient. You know, Ohio took 8 months to finish the regulations. So either there's an orchestrated process going on right now to put this thing off and to continue to kick the can down the road, or we have the worst administrator you've ever seen in any state.
So other states have done it much more quickly, like Ohio, like Pennsylvania, like West Virginia. Is New York different than these other states as far as their geology? I mean, is there some compelling reason why it's taking so long here?
In my view, the difference is the makeup of our population in this state. You know, we tend to be a hotbed for environmental extremists. You know, Yoko Ono doesn't live in Ohio.
Right.
And it's that type of opposition that's going on that we're seeing here in New York. You know, some of the actors that live in New York City or in Sullivan County, those types pushing these issues in a way that is not happening throughout the country. What frustrates me is that there's this thought that maybe New Yorkers are smarter than the rest of the country. But we know that that's not true. Right? We're smart people. But our experience with this is not the same as everyone's experience in Texas, in Colorado, in Oklahoma. They've been doing it for years, and they laugh at us. They know that we have this opportunity here. They know what it means. They know what the risks are. And they laugh at us for not moving forward.
So you've said that something has now changed, you know, that up until this point, it's, you know, keep your powder dry, and hold on because they're working through the process. What has now changed? What's tipped you off that something now is different and it's political and not scientific?
What's changed is that it's common knowledge that the SGIS is done. It is common knowledge that the regulations are done. This last round that we went through with the regulations, it was not a big change. The regulations, by the way, are not nearly as big as the SGIS. The SGIS is some 1,600 pages. The regulations are small. The changes that were made to the regulations were modest. And so there is no reason that the regulations could not be ready to go. And then we hear Commissioner Martens talking about the health review, but what did we see this week? We saw that the committee members on the advisory committee said that they completed their review and their work 2 months ago. So it's all ready. This really comes down to Governor Cuomo. Is Governor Cuomo prepared to do this or not? And we think that if Governor Cuomo really has national aspirations, better start looking at what's going on in New York, because he's about to have a lawsuit on his resume for holding up drilling. What was the major issue in this last election in November? The key battleground states were Ohio and Pennsylvania. Those states would never have elected someone like Governor Cuomo, who's held up drilling in New York. That's what he will be facing in the future unless he gets on with this and lets landowners participate in this process and market and really protect their private property rights.
So we get to Wednesday, and if, I realize it's a theoretical, lawyers don't like theoreticals, but if we don't have the published requirement from the DEC, in other words, they slipped the deadline, when should we expect to see a lawsuit filed? Is it going to be the next day? Is it the end of the month? Or?
We've laid the groundwork by doing the research, looking at the issues, making sure that we have valid allegations that can be put into a complaint against the state. We're there. Now it's a matter of putting together the support, finishing up the research, finishing up the papers. That could take some time. But we will be going full steam ahead if this does not happen in February.
Okay. So if it comes to a lawsuit, has there been this kind of lawsuit in the past? Is there a precedent for suing the state of New York, for instance, for takings, where they've denied, a citizen something, and was it successful or not?
You're already seeing takings claims being brought because towns are passing bans, and so there's a hunting club in Sullivan County that filed one a few months ago.
Right.
Those types of claims will continue. Now, in this case, they're not quite done. They're going to come back and say that we still have work to do, and it'll be our job to prove that that's not the case, that they've really held this off for other reasons, and they've taken far longer than they should. So the case has some challenges to it, for sure. But it will also be clear to us that we'll have no choice. We will have been pushed into a corner, and we will have no choice but to come out with a lawsuit to move the state.
Just one last question. You're also the lawyer, I believe, for the Central New York CNY Landowners Coalition up in Shenango County. And I read last week that the Village of Oxford voted to proceed with a ban or a moratorium. Not sure which. And I know that there had been some rumblings about a potential lawsuit if that were to take place. Is that moving forward now?
The Central New York landowners have put together a landowner protection fund, and their intention is to fight whatever happens in the Village of Oxford. The Village had been looking at a moratorium. And so the moratorium case there was very similar to the case that we had in the city of Binghamton. We had reached out to Rob Woodlake to assist in that. Now it's changed.
That case was thrown out.
That case was thrown out. The Binghamton case.
The Binghamton case.
The Binghamton moratorium was dismissed by Judge Leibus. But now Oxford has taken a new route. They've decided to issue a ban instead of a moratorium. The ban is now similar to the Middlefield and the Dryden cases, and we are arguing those appeals at the appellate division in March.
You expect a decision in March to come down on those?
Well, we'll argue the case in March, and we expect the decision to come within a few months after that.
Okay, great. Scott, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Jim.